Welcome to All About Art. My name is Alexandra, and I'm an art historian, curator, and writer. Within this podcast, topics relating to art history, cultural policy, the art sector, as well as a large range of other art-related topics will be covered. Conducting critical discussions, having entertaining exchanges, or just enjoying some relaxing chats, All About Art is where you'll find it all. Join me in exploring and developing cultural discourse. Welcome to another episode of All About Art. This one is on the topic of sustainability in art, and I got to sit down with the founder of Key Culture, Caitlin Southwick. Key Culture is an international nonprofit working to unite culture and sustainability. They use culture as an all-inclusive term, from visual arts to heritage to performing arts. And sustainability is used in a wider sense of the word, encompassing all three pillars: environmental, social, and economic, which is something that we talk about later on in the episode. The company aims to redesign systems and rethink how and what we do to find solutions that will be better for the people, better for culture, and better for the planet. So listen on to hear me ask Caitlin about founding a nonprofit and the process of building it from the ground up. We talk about how important sustainability is and how we can do better in the arts sector. We also touch on finances and important projects Key Culture is spearheading, along with stories about how she travels internationally in a sustainable way, and how that has led to some strange adventures. Thank you to Caitlin for coming on and to Key Culture for the collaboration. Thank you to our sponsors at Synergy Associates, the art world tech gurus, for supporting this episode's production at their clubhouse on Pall Mall. You can find more about Synergy and their facilities in the show notes. Before I dive in, I wanted to let you lovely listeners know that All About Art is on Patreon. So if you want some behind-the-scenes content, maybe a bit of merch, the chance to get one-on-ones with me and my guests, or you're simply wanting to support this project, I would be absolutely thrilled if you decided to sign up. You can do so through the link in the show notes. I also wanted to say thank you to those who have already signed up. Your support means the world, and it makes the further production, improvement, and growth of the podcast possible. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. And now, on to the interview. All right, Caitlin, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and coming on the All About Art podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So I'm just going to dive right in with my first question. You are the founder of Key Culture, an international nonprofit that is working to unite culture and sustainability. In your mission, you state that you use culture as an all-inclusive term, from visual arts to heritage to performing arts, and that sustainability is used in a wide sense of the word, encompassing all three pillars: environmental, social, and economic, which we're going to talk about later in the episode.
Look forward to it.
The company aims to redesign systems and rethink how and what we do to find solutions that will be better for people, better for culture, and better for the planet. So before we get into what Key Culture does, I want to know, what led you to start the company, and how has that process been since the initial inception?
Oh, it's been fun. Certainly as a roller coaster. I have to say that I never expected to start my own company. It was really born out of seeing a need for something, seeing a gap, and wanting to do something about it. Basically, I'm an art conservator by training. So I was a stone conservator for 8 years. I had probably the coolest job you can have. I mean, I've worked at the Uffizi galleries. I've done research at the Getty Conservation Institute. I was a conservator at the Vatican museums. I was part of the first team to go down to Rapa Nui and work on the Moai statues, and I loved my job. I've always been very passionate about art, and it made sense for me to want to preserve that experience for future generations. I was lucky enough to be able to go explore some of the most amazing art galleries and museums in the world, even from a young age, and that had a huge impact on me. And so preserving art was something I was very passionate about. But I also grew up in Colorado. I'm a mountain girl. I love this beautiful planet we live on. And standing on the beaches of Rapa Nui, dumping toxic chemicals over the Moai and watching it run into the ground and out into the ocean just churned my stomach.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's got to be a better way to do this. We need to be able to both conserve art, but also not at the expense of the planet. This was really just a way for me to look into how I could be more sustainable in my own practice. And when this started, I was very much in the lens of environmental sustainability. And I think that in North America and in Europe, that's usually considered almost synonymous. A lot of people say sustainability and they go to climate crisis.
Yeah.
Which actually it's not. As you mentioned, it's actually a much wider web of all of these interconnected components, from social to environment to economic, and it's very difficult to talk about one without talking about all three. But basically what happened was I wanted to do better in my own career and couldn't find anything about how to be more environmentally responsible. It was the silliest thing, but I was walking by the trash can in my studio one day and I looked down and it was just full of disposable nitrile gloves. And I thought, well, this is so wasteful. Can't we do something about this? And, I asked my lecturers and they didn't know. And it took me 3 months. I finally found that there was a recycling program for gloves. I found it at the University of Edinburgh in their chemistry department. And I thought, the solutions are out there. Why does the cultural sector not have access to these? And why are we not engaging already? And, everyone I talk to, there's nobody I know in the cultural sector who doesn't think that sustainability is important, who isn't engaged with social justice or climate justice and doesn't want to help advocate for the societal issues that we're facing today.
Yeah.
The problem is how, and how does it apply to us, and how do we still do our jobs while also being able to hold humanity and the planet in the highest esteem? When I finished my doctorate, I just thought, if we are really going to be focused on this in a very serious way, we need a full-time company with full-time paid staff who are really going to be focusing just on finding solutions and making them accessible and easy to implement in the cultural sector. And, I spent so much time looking into what the barriers were, what the bottlenecks were. And it's really, in my opinion, there's a few different elements here, but a big part of it is a lack of resources. And people often cite that either they don't have time, or there's not a budget, or that they just don't know. They maybe don't feel comfortable, or they don't have the right information. And I also think that a huge component of this is communication barriers. So, for example, there's so much amazing work happening around the world, but people just aren't talking about it for one reason or another. And if you want, we can delve into details on that.
Yeah.
But it was really just me seeing a gap and seeing a need for someone to tackle this full on. And at that time, there were very few organizations engaged, but I thought that it was time that we looked at it not only on an individual scale, but on a holistic scale. So how can we tackle this together internationally and as a sector?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to talk about the various programs and projects that Key Culture conducts, because as many of our listeners are in the art world, I think that it would be great to hear about, for example, the project Getting Climate Under Control, which is an initiative that aims to inspire and inform arts organizations to integrate systems that will result in positive change in terms of how they operate. For example, optimizing climates in which artworks are stored, which for anyone who's ever worked in a gallery or in an art warehouse, there are certain, circumstances in which artworks are stored, and that has an impact, and that it's something that we should talk about more. So can you tell me a bit more about that?
So as a conservator, I can tell you a lot about climate control. And basically, it's this concept that you can store different types of materials in quote unquote ideal temperature and relative humidity conditions in order to optimize their conservation or prolong their life.
Yeah.
That's a very easy summary of it.
Yeah.
How climate control got into museums was really in the 1950s, 60s, 70s. There started being a lot of discussion about this. And then when HVAC systems were implemented, there was a need to kind of figure out, okay, how is this going to affect our collections? And if we put HVAC systems in to help regulate the indoor climate for the comfort of our audience, then what impact is that going to have on the objects who have maybe been used to different climatic conditions throughout their thousands or hundreds of years of life? And very, very long story short, because it started and then it was taken out of context and then it was re-referenced and re-referenced over time until basically we got to this point where we're using these numbers as quote unquote standards, which were really meant to be more guidelines and meant for specific contexts.
Yeah.
For example, paintings in the National Gallery, 60/60. All of a sudden that's being implemented in Australia and in Brazil and for collections that are not paintings. So we have this misconception about what the quote unquote standards are. And I always use those in quotes because actually there are no standards. And preventive conservators are really the people who can best tell you what ideal conditions are for your collections. The biggest problem we have actually is that it's really difficult to control an entire museum or an entire building to the strict requirements that people are talking about for idealized conditions.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to keep a museum at, a certain temperature, let's say 19 degrees plus or minus 2 degrees, I mean, the energy consumption of that is astronomical.
Yeah.
And so really, if you do have a sensitive object that does require strict conditions of either temperature or relative humidity, the best thing to do is put it in a microclimate, which could be a display case or some sort of small storage box that you can actually control the temperature and relative humidity.
Yeah.
So the best thing that museums actually can do if you have a sensitive object is to put it in what's called a microclimate. So either a display case that's sealed or some sort of storage box that you actually can control the relative humidity or temperature to that really strict standard.
Yeah.
But doing that in an entire building doesn't make a lot of sense in so many different ways. We actually did a conference on this issue last December, and it's on our YouTube channel. So if you want to know all of the science, all of the nitty gritty, all the details from the leading experts around the world, please check out the conference, and that gets into all of the science behind it. But
we'll link it in the show notes. We'll find it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, because I was just thinking, like, might be quite a stupid question, or it might be answered in that conference. But like, if you're trying to do that in an entire museum where people are viewing it as well, like the amount of people and their body heat will also completely change the climate. And then you're going to have to, like, in real time, adapt the climate to the amount of people that are in the room, which could also cause discomfort to the people within the room as well. So it's just such a, like, I need to find another word for clusterfuck. It's such...
that's the perfect description, actually. It really is.
Like, it sounds impossible. It sounds incredibly complicated.
Well, it's not even just the complication aspect, which is true. I mean, imagine trying to control the relative humidity in a place like London where it's raining all the time.
Yeah, of course.
And then you've got people coming in with umbrellas and wet shoes and wet coats and wet hair, and it just drives up the relative humidity. And so then you're trying to, manage that. And it's the whole thing. It does require a lot of very heavy equipment.
Yeah.
And very expensive equipment.
Yeah.
And so
a lot of energy.
And consequently, exactly, a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And me talking about this and talking about the need to update climate control conditions, I'm not the first person to say this by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, this is like going back to 2008, 2014, when the BESO protocol came out, when ICOM-CC and IIC put in the joint declaration. Like, people have been basically advocating for this for years, but people have not made the change. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. But what's exciting is that now people are really ready to make this change. And I think the reason for that, unfortunately, or we'll call it a silver lining, is the energy crisis.
Yeah.
So as the climate crisis becomes more and more severe and impacting our daily lives, and the energy crisis impacting our wallets, museums can no longer afford to keep these ridiculous ranges.
No.
And so we're looking at updating and finally implementing the guidelines that have been recommended for the past almost 20 years. The issue, though, of course, is that it's scary to make change. And of course, it also requires a lot of different stakeholders and different players. It's not easy for one museum to just say, we're going to make this change and you guys can all deal with it. Although the Guggenheim Bilbao did that, and I love them for it.
We applaud the Guggenheim Bilbao.
Yes. And a shout out to Daniel, who is just an absolute rock star and leader on all of this. But basically, a lot of museums cite that they can't make the change because of loan agreements with other museums.
That's what I was going to bring up. I was going to be like, loan agreements, that's
a huge barrier. And because there is this barrier to change because of a systemic issue, it has to be a collective solution. And so what we wanted to do with the Getting Climate Control Under Control project was bring some clarity and transparency to this issue, try and relieve people of the fear of making these updates, and do it collectively. So we put together this 4-part project. We actually started with a survey that assessed what people were using in terms of their climate control regulations, guidelines, whatever you want to call it, throughout the world. Because one of the other issues we have, of course, in the sector is a lack of transparency.
Yeah.
We have all of these barriers to why people haven't wanted to make change. And one of them is the loan agreements. One of them is that it's very scary. As a conservator, we are quite risk adverse. We are taught to be that. So it's a lot of responsibility on one person's shoulders to say, oh, it's okay to just flip the switch and increase the ranges. I'm going to call it updating your climate conditions because I think that's better semantically. It makes it feel very professional and empowering. So that's the language we're going to use.
Yeah.
But it can feel very scary because, you don't want to be someone that checks off on doing something and then something happens and there's damage caused.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, because it's on you then.
Exactly. And also it's really helpful to see when other museums are doing it. And because we have this lack of transparency, nobody knows who's adapted BESO or who's implemented the AICCM guidelines. People don't know what other people are using, which makes it very difficult to do it themselves. I've had so many museums come to me and say, yeah, we'd be happy to make the switch, but we don't want to be the first ones to do it, or we want to see a case study where someone else did it, or how many museums have done that so that we can see that it's not going to cause damage. We need proof. So very long story short, we've put together this 4-part program. The first part was the survey to actually see what people were using and why. And then we did the conference, so 2-day conference where we brought on basically all of the leading researchers on this issue to talk about what climate control is, and how to use it, and basically what the whole conversation was. So how it started and how we got to the point of where we are. So blowing, wide open the history about this, getting some transparency and alleviating the fear. I think that's a lot of it as well. And really reassuring people that it's okay to make these upgrades. And then we launched a declaration in collaboration with Art 2030 and Tino Segal, where we're collecting signatures from galleries, artists, museums, and cultural professionals and conservators, of course, from around the world, stating that they are committed to making these updates and that they are going to be, supporting the change. And then finally, of course, it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to actually do it. So in order to have all the case studies we need to have that collective action and support, we're launching the Getting Climate Control Under Control pilot. So this will be launching this spring. And we're going to be working with 50 organizations from North America and Europe. And we are going to be basically guiding them through the process of upgrading their climate control conditions. It's actually, studies have shown that by optimizing systems and by increasing ranges or updating your climate control ranges, you can save between 24 and 82% on your energy.
Wow.
82%.
That's huge.
It's huge. And considering
astronomical, really.
Yeah, it is absolutely jaw-dropping that we haven't already been doing this.
Yeah.
But of course, now that we have energy prices tripling,
yeah,
it's really exciting because not only will museums not have to worry about their energy prices tripling, but they'll save from their baseline. So at the end of this 18-month project, we will have 50 case studies from different types of organizations. And then we'll have a methodology that any museum or gallery or space in the world can replicate and implement. I mean, it's my goal by the end of 2024, I don't want a single museum or gallery space in the world to be relying on outdated systems. I want everyone to be actively making change.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that if even with this one change, we might be able to hit our goal of having carbon emissions by 2030.
Yeah. And on that note of people working together and you basically bringing together, what did you say, 50 organizations?
Yeah, for the pilot.
Yeah, for the pilot in North America and Europe. And so that also means that you have to travel.
Yes.
And when you and I first met, we met over Zoom.
We did.
And you told me stories about not only your business, but also your way of life, because you very much practice what you preach.
I have to.
So on that topic of practicing what you preach and travel, would you be up for sharing more about how you reach people internationally and what that means for you when traveling sustainably?
Absolutely. So a year ago, I embarked on this adventure of being a digital nomad. So I am originally from the United States. I've lived in Europe for 12 years and in the Netherlands for the past 7. And I gave up my apartment and went back to the States for a little while. But then I came back to Europe in March, and I was looking at my conference schedule, and I was thinking, like, I'm only going to be in Amsterdam like 2 days a month. This makes absolutely no sense for me to have an apartment here. And so I thought, let's see how this would work out doing a kind of a digital nomad thing. But obviously I wanted to do this in a way that was as sustainable as possible, because as you said, for me, it is incredibly important that I practice what I preach. And that's not just because like it's my job as a executive director of an organization that promotes sustainability to also be sustainable. It is personally for me very important. And I also think that if you can show people how it's done, then that is actually the most effective way to inspire change. Basically, long story short is that I traveled to, it was 18 countries last year. I can't count how many trains, I can't count how many cities. And I took 2 flights. But basically, I've just discovered this whole world of traveling by trains. And of course, I think we've all kind of done that, but it's so interesting to me how quickly I've become accustomed to train travel, because a lot of times people, it's so long and it's expensive, and it's just easier to fly, and it's everyone always says, it's cheaper to fly, which is one of the systemic problems that we have.
I hate it. I hate it so much. I love taking the train.
The train's
I love taking the train.
It's so much more relaxing.
Yeah.
Like there have been so many times where I've been so panicked about missing my train, and then I get there and I miss my train, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Oh, it's fine. I'll just take the next one.
Yeah, it's so easy. And then you don't have to worry about liquids. Like when you travel, you don't have to worry about your tech. Like you could literally do work on the train. You can chill. You can look out the window. I love taking trains way more than I love flying.
100%. And it's really so easy. I mean, I do have to say, I'll tell you a couple of stories about places that I got into a little bit of a pickle when it came to taking the trains. But it's so funny because, of course, before I always thought like, oh, if I'm going somewhere, I'll just book a flight. And now I don't even think about flying.
Yeah.
And it's just normal for me to take the train. And it's also just normal for me to know that it's going to take more time. I'm very, very fortunate that I have the capacity to do this. I understand that it's not always feasible for people to travel from, let's see, where am I going next? Switzerland. So from London to the south of Switzerland by train, because, maybe they have families that they need to get home to, or don't want to spend that much time away from their kids, or their job wouldn't let them do that or something. So I am very, very lucky that I can make those decisions and I can go everywhere by train. But it is really has been such an incredible experience in so many ways. And I've had, as I said, I've had a couple of times where I've felt like, okay, sustainable travel needs to be more sustainable. And an example of this was I was in Portugal, where I did not have so much luck. And I got stranded in Huelva, Spain, because there are no trains between Portugal and Spain.
Oh, wow.
How is that possible in this day and age that Portugal, you can only get to it by car or by plane?
There's no other way.
Trains. And that just boggles my mind. And Portugal, of course, has trains.
Yeah.
But I couldn't, I went down south. And now, to be 100% transparent, I'm not 100% sure if you can get a train from, for example, Madrid to Lisbon.
Yeah.
But in terms of going south, but I don't think so. And in terms of going south, because I went down, I was going to Faro in the south of Portugal. Mm-hmm. So I did Madrid to Seville, and then I did Seville to Huelva. And then basically you had to take a bus. But this time they would not let me on the bus with the dog. So I'm in Huelva, and I'm just like, I don't have any idea how to get there. I'm supposed to be there for a conference. And by the way, I'm already late. And I just broke down crying in the middle of the street. And I was just like, I'm here with my dog. By the way, my suitcase broke.
So, to add on top of it, your suitcase broke.
That's why I started crying.
Yeah.
I landed in Seville. And the bus station was like a 45-minute walk from the train station. No. I mean, to be fair, I could have taken the bus, but poor Max had been on trains. I mean, we'd come from Amsterdam. So Amsterdam, Paris down to Barcelona to Madrid, and then Madrid to Seville. And I was like, the poor guy could really use a walk. We've got plenty of time before the bus goes, and I only have one small suitcase with me, plus, of course, my other 5 bags. I was like, and I've never been to Seville. I'd love to stroll around and see how beautiful it is. So I started walking, and if you've ever been there, the cobblestone pathways are not super suitcase friendly. So about 20 minutes in, one of the wheels pops off, and so I reached down to pick it up, and the thing had melted off, and it burned me. So then
Listeners can't see my face right now, but I'm a bit shocked. What?
Yeah, the wheel had literally melted. It was metal, and there was so much friction that it had melted off. So I reached down to pick it up, and I burned my hand. So I'm like, okay, so I have this really great Chinese burn cream. So I'm like putting that on me. I dig it out of my suitcase. This is the other thing, is you have to take everything with you everywhere.
This is getting into science. It's like one Pandora's box opens. Like
No, seriously, it's the whole thing. Anyway, I'll sum this up. So I finally get to Huelva with a broken suitcase, and oh God, I mean, it's a really long story. I don't know how much you want me to get there. But basically, I get to the train station or the bus station in Seville. I'm going to take the bus. They won't let me on with the dog. They say, go try the train station. I'm like, they just told me they don't do trains. But anyway, I'll just go back. So I went back. And they were like, yeah, you can't get to Portugal from here. I'm like, cool. How far can I get? And they're like, you can get to Huelva. I'm like, great. Give me a ticket for that. And they're like, you just missed the train. It left 10 minutes ago. So the next one's in 5 hours. I'm like, perfect. Bring it on. I'm just going to go sit outside and have some ice cream. So I'm sitting outside, and I call the conference coordinators, and I'm like, guys, I don't know how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
Like, do you have any suggestions, any ideas? Basically, I had plotted out a route that I could get to Huelva by train, and then take 3 different buses to get to the border town, walk over the border, and then take the train from the border town in Portugal to Faro. And it was going to take me another 6.5 hours. And so I called them. I was like, I know that you have the opening reception tonight. I know I'm supposed to be there. Here's where I'm at. Here's the situation. What am I going to do? They ended up sending a private car to pick me up.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to throw in the towel with that.
You just have to call
honestly.
So I was very grateful, and thank you again to the amazing crew at Nemo for rescuing me.
I think that was deserved. I think that no more tears were shed that evening.
I went and had a fabulous dinner and a bottle of wine.
I was just going to say, hopefully like a huge gin and tonic.
So there have been some horror stories, but to be honest, like overall, it's been such an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And, you just get used to it. Like, as I said, I'm going down to Switzerland next. I'm just know that it's going to take me 2 days to get there. And I'm stopping off along the way to see other colleagues and other friends. And, I'll stop up in Stuttgart and meet some people who I've never met before.
Yeah.
And it's just...
Stopped off in London to meet me.
Stopped off in London to meet you, of course. So, yeah, I mean, it's you get used to it really quickly, which is so interesting, because I think when it comes to sustainability, sometimes it's just about changing habits or changing mindsets.
Yeah.
It's just about, instead of immediately going, oh, I'm going to Barcelona. Okay, what's the next flight?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to Barcelona. Cool. What's the train?
Yeah. And I think that like when people change their habits, then I think that possibly the infrastructures can get better. You can see that demand heighten a little bit. And then hopefully maybe tickets will go down. There'll be better connections. I mean, there are already, like within Europe, there are amazing connections. But, sometimes, as you say, it's more expensive to take the train.
Exactly.
And it sucks.
It totally sucks. But I do have to say, lobby for this with your company. Lobby for sustainable travel with your company. Yeah. And I mean, I'm very fortunate that when I go to conferences, for example, I just tell them, I say, you're literally bringing me here to talk about sustainability, so I will be coming by train.
Hearing all of your stories, I mean, it's incredibly interesting, and I'm glad to hear that there are way more positive experiences than the negative ones.
Definitely.
Coming back to Key Culture, I would love to hear more about the Key Futures program. I know that it's an international coaching and training network. It gives people tailored advice on sustainability and best practices. What does something like that look like?
Well, it's a little bit difficult to explain because it's never been done before.
Okay.
So bear with me. Basically, Key Futures is everything I wanted when I was a conservator. So I felt completely helpless and alone. I felt that I didn't have any support systems or anyone to ask questions to. And I felt that I didn't have the resources that I needed to make sustainable change. And Key Futures answers all of those questions. So the way that the program is structured, so basically people sign up to be champions. And as a champion, you go through this never-ending journey on sustainability. So one thing that makes the program a little bit different than other sustainability initiatives is that it is never-ending, because sustainability is never-ending. There's always more that you can do. There's always more that you can learn. And also that doesn't put a time frame on it. And I think that alleviates some of the pressure, because sometimes we feel like sustainability is something that we have to, it's a tick box, or we have to accomplish it in 6 weeks.
Or it's this huge unsurmountable thing because we're never going to, but it's actually, it's little changes, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, exactly. It's this overwhelm, and giving yourself some space makes it feel like, you can go through a process, that it doesn't have to be just a switch that you flip, but it's actually something that, okay, we're going to start here and we're going to go here. And having someone to guide you through that process is really helpful. I have to say, hand holding is my favorite thing when it comes to sustainability, because it's all about working together and supporting each other, and, having those systems and those and that guidance. And that's really the focus on the Key Futures program. So the way the program is set up is that it's kind of a train the trainers program, or an empowerment. We focus really on cultivating cultures of sustainability within organizations. So we work with basically all kinds of stakeholders within the cultural sector. So museums, conservation studios, artists, galleries, vendors and suppliers, packing and shipping companies. Deedle is one of our most active Key Futures champions. Yeah, they've got like 40 of their staff members on board, like making all of these amazing changes and learning about sustainability. It's really cool. And the Terra Foundation. So we also work with foundations. We work with municipalities. So anyone who needs to be part of conversations to really tackle systemic change is part of this. And the other part, of course, is that it's international. So we don't just work within Europe, or even just within Europe, North America, but we have, the National Museum of Lagos in Nigeria, and the Museo Moderno in Buenos Aires. And we work with organizations in Kenya and in Brazil, and now branching out into Australia and into Hong Kong. And so it's really looking at how we can have these conversations on a global scale. And so we provide coaching, as I mentioned. So basically you're assigned a coach who is there to be your personal mentor. So as a champion group within an institution, you'll work with your coach to figure out, okay, what are we doing here? What are our goals? How do we want to accomplish them? And then you have someone to check in with you every month, and, to answer your questions when you have them, and to find things that you need found, like the glove recycling program. I cannot tell you how much I wish I had someone to call and just say, how do we recycle these gloves? Well, let me give you the list. And by the way, if you want the list, it's on siconserve.org. There are several programs available, and the solutions are there. Once again, it's just a matter of spoon feeding them to us. Yeah. And I feel like, as people who are overworked and underpaid, who primarily think that the biggest obstacle to sustainability is that we don't have time for it, it's really, really useful to have that system of support.
Absolutely.
And so we have your coach that you're working with one-on-one, but your coach is also working with other institutions that are interested in this similar topic. So then you have this peer-to-peer learning network that you're working together. So you guys can, knowledge exchange, best practice exchange, share resources and share experience, and become friends.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have the coaches that are all working together. They all have their own areas of expertise and specialization. So you have not only the experience and expertise of your coach, but also of the entire coaching network. Then we have partners who are involved, like the Gallery Climate Coalition. So, we work with them with promoting their carbon calculator. And so it's a really great way to basically bring together all of the players who are active in this space into one gigantic network. So in addition to the coaching aspect, there's the training, because for me, it's really about education. I believe 100% that if people knew what the right decisions were, and right meaning more sustainable, then they would make them. And I always give the example of when I was a little girl. I'd go to the grocery store, and in the United States, they would pack your groceries for you. This is, of course, back in the day.
Oh, they still do that sometimes.
Oh, they still do that. Okay.
Safeway.
Nice. I haven't lived there in a very long time.
Yeah.
But there you go. Yeah. So you get your groceries, and they pack, and they say, would you like paper or plastic?
Yeah.
And I remember my mom telling me that in order to make the paper bags, they had to cut down trees. And that was very upsetting to me. So I said, I want to save the forests. So they would ask, do you want paper or plastic? And I would very proudly say, I want plastic, because I want to save the trees. But of course, now I know that's that's the wrong answer in
Yeah.
terms of actually the correct answer is neither. Thank you. I brought my own bag.
Yes, there we go. Yep.
Sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes it's the option C, which no one has thought of. So,
Yeah.
and that's the whole key to why I think that culture has got to be leaders in this. But we can get into that later. So anyway, so it's about education. So every week we have an event, and it's either a course or a workshop or champion presentations, so sharing best practice, networking sessions. So it's a way to have continuous engagement. So every week you think, oh, it's Tuesday, I've got my Key Futures event, and that's your sustainability seed being, nourished. So as, you plant it, and then every week you water it a little bit, and then it keeps growing and growing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the biggest part of this is working together and having this collaborative international network so that we can find solutions to systemic problems by bringing in all the stakeholders, that we can inspire each other, and then we don't feel alone in this.
Yeah.
And, that was my whole thing. I mean, I remember when I was a student and I was talking about sustainability, and my fellow students would laugh at me.
Really?
Yeah, I had nicknames. Like it was not fun.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was the thing. Sustain a girl, glove girl.
Oh, I like that though. Oh, maybe we should get you like a hat or a t-shirt.
Oh, there we go. You know what? I can be proud of it now. I think it was, I don't know if it was meant in the nicest way, but we're going to.
You know what? I would have thought you were really cool. Okay.
You know what? Thank you. I love you for that. Yeah, it was definitely, because it was a little bit not the hot topic of conversation. Of course, now that's not the case. Everyone's into sustainability, especially the students. But thank goodness, indeed. So this is how the Key Futures program works. And as I said, it's a lot, but it's really important to have all of these different components, because sustainability is something you have to tackle in every. You can't see me point, but it has to be top down, it has to be bottom up, it has to be inside out, it has to be upside in. And the problem is that all has to happen simultaneously.
Yeah.
And it's also, everyone's at different places in their journey, and everyone has different things that they need. So you need this really holistic, comprehensive program so that people can pick what makes sense for them. Maybe you're just starting out in your journey and you really don't know what sustainability is. That's great, by the way. And come join us, because we will help you. And you can start with just learning about things. And you don't have to engage with your coach yet. You don't have to be posting your success stories. Just listen and take it in and start learning about it. Start educating yourself. So, it's breaking down that consultancy model by not working on helping one person at a time or one institution at a time, but making this a collective action that we're all working on this together.
Yeah. Yeah. And if someone were to, let's say I owned a gallery, or I was director of a museum or something, and I was listening in, how would I approach you to take part in Key Futures?
Yeah, well, we have an application on our website. So it's keyculture.org/keyfutures, and it's KI, which is actually.
Which will be in the title of the podcast and everything.
Correct. Yes. Key actually is the Sumerian earth goddess. And it is also the pronoun for nature. Yes, who knew?
Fun fact.
Nice. And actually, our logo is the cuneiform symbol for key. So it's, ties everything together: nature, history, culture, all the good things.
Amazing.
Anyway, so please fill out an application on our website, or just send us an email, keyfutures@keyculture.org. Yeah. And we'd love to have you. It's open to everyone. There is a price point. We will talk about this, because I know we're going to talk about business models in a minute. Actually. So we also do offer scholarships and have sponsorships, and really like to work with organizations who might not be able to afford a program like this to find grants and subsidies. So even if you don't know if you can afford it or not, please apply and we'll make it work. And also, it's open to individuals, to students, and to professors and researchers. So literally anyone who considers themselves a cultural person, please join. We have an amazing network of people who, like you, want to be more sustainable. So it's really fun and very enriching and empowering to be surrounded by like-minded individuals. So come join us.
I love that. I love that. Well, because we've already mentioned it, I am going to move on to my penultimate question of this episode. I remember you mentioning that sustainability is not only environmental and social, but it's also financial. Talking about money is always a tad taboo. And you and I both are not fans of that taboo.
Not even a little bit.
So I would like to bring some transparency into these sorts of things.
Love it.
And I want to ask you about Key Culture's business model as a nonprofit with fundraising and grants and all of that. How does that affect you entrepreneurially? And, generally, I'd love to speak more about that, whatever kind of direction you want to take in terms of lending a bit more transparency to this topic.
Oh, I mean, we can have a whole podcast just on this topic, but I'll try to keep it succinct. One of the other barriers that we've noticed in terms of implementing sustainable action is financial. Oftentimes museums cite budget restrictions as being a barrier for sustainability because, culture tends to be first budget cuts, or, museums have this kind of short-term survival mode because we're always struggling to find money. And a lot of this has to do with the grant system, which that's a whole nother discussion, but a lot of it has to do with just this idea that we are not, as a cultural sector, we are not financially sustainable. I also believe that the nonprofit sector is not financially sustainable. So the way that it's done obviously differently in different countries, but in the Netherlands, where Key Culture is registered, it is required that I believe 70% of your revenue has to come from donations, grants, and subsidies. So I very naively started Key Culture in 2019 with zero funding. So I started Key Culture, I got a co-working space at my university, and I opened my laptop and I started Key Culture. And I very naively thought, this is an amazing project. This is an amazing thing that it's so necessary. So there's going to be money for this. But there were so many restrictions. Like, one of the big problems is that if you're looking at foundational support or grants, you need to maybe demonstrate 3 years of financial records, or you need to have an in. A lot of foundations don't accept unsolicited calls, or you need to be part of this clique if you're looking at government money, because I, as a foreigner in the Netherlands, didn't really understand how the funding system worked there.
Right.
Couldn't really break into it. The European funding stuff is very cliquey. It's really, if you're in, you're in. But if you're not in, if you're not known. And of course, the huge problem here is that you can spend literally a year writing a grant application that then may be funded or may not be funded, but you're never going to get that time back.
We always talk about like ACE funding, so Arts Council England, for those who don't know what ACE is, and how it takes forever to write these grant applications if you're applying as a company or as a nonprofit or something like that. Like, it's very time consuming, and everyone tells you it's so unlikely that you're going to be receiving this funding if you're applying for the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's so rare. And you're like, why? What? Then why does that make sense? How is that a thing?
Then how? Exactly. And these funding streams, I think, in my opinion, really inhibit innovation and entrepreneurship. It certainly has been frustrating because, I started this and I thought, okay, I'm going to get a grant for this. Couldn't break into that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go down like the corporate sponsorship route, and I'm going to see if I can find a company to throw me a bone here. And I started talking to a couple of companies, and then COVID hit because I registered Key Culture in November of 2019. So 2020 was rough. We did a crowdfunding campaign, which basically got me through the year. We raised like 8,000 euros, so not massive amounts of money.
Yeah.
By the way, full transparency, I have still not paid myself. I do not collect a salary right now. That will change this year. Knock all of the wood.
Yay!
But to date, I still have not paid myself a penny. And that seems very counterintuitive in a lot of ways. But basically, then we got a grant call. So what happened was in 2021, I believe it was, there was a grant that was going in for an Erasmus Plus project. And they needed someone from the cultural sector. And they Googled us and they found us and they were like, do you want to come in on this grant? And we were like, oh my gosh, yes. To be honest with you, I don't think I even read the thing. Please. I was just like, absolutely. And great project, and it's coming up on the end of its 2-year term, but that got us through the first, and it was not a lot of money. It was 40,000 over the course of like 2+ years.
Okay.
So 20,000 a year, and that was basically all of our income for 2021.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm not having any luck with this grant stuff. This is not enough money. And also, I want to do my projects and programs. I don't want to be chasing after pre-dictated, I guess, for lack of a better word, projects. I want to make sure that we're really sticking with our mission. And so we started looking at how we could generate our own revenue.
Yeah.
So we started offering trainings and we collected a little money there. And then what I originally wanted to do with the Key Futures program was to have it be an open, free program. And so anyone could just sign up and join. But I needed funding for that.
Yeah.
And once again, I was trying to reach out to partners, but both foundations, organizations, institutions. I tried everybody. And, the foundations, we don't do international projects or whatever it is. It just, nothing aligns. So I was like, fine, I'm going to have to put a price point on this because I want to pay my staff. I want to pay my coaches. I want to pay the trainers.
Yeah.
So we did put a price point on it. We charge people based on their carbon footprint. So it is a polluters pay model, which I hope makes it as equitable and accessible as possible. So obviously, even if you're in England, a big museum versus a small museum, there's got to be a price difference.
Yeah.
But also, a small museum in the UK may have a different carbon footprint than a huge museum in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So there's all of that.
That is so interesting. I love that.
Thanks.
I find that, I don't know anything about this. Is that something that you had seen before and that you wanted to adopt, or is that something that you fully came up with?
I made it up.
All right.
And to be honest with you, it's a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be.
It sounds quite straightforward,
you would think so, right? You would think, it's just you just take that and multiply it by a number, and then you've got your number. But no, it's actually a lot more difficult than that because we do want to maintain this equitability. We have to take into consideration the country. So we have different tiers, and we base that on GDPR, which now I'm being told is not the best way to base it. So we might be looking at larger impact of countries in terms of fossil fuel production and things like this. But also on top of that, basically the way that you calculate carbon offsets is by calculating your carbon footprint and then multiplying it by a certain number, and then you get a dollar amount. So I thought it was going to be that straightforward. But of course, what are you calculating? Carbon calculations are not that straightforward. So are we taking into consideration scope 3, which includes visitor impact? So are we including all of the visitors that come to your museum? Or are we just including your building? So it's
so if people are traveling for that, for example, the Venice Biennale, that's going to have a much larger, visitor influx from international, institutions, organizations, or just generally international visitors and tourists that are coming. But I went to Venice specifically for the Biennale.
Yep. And that's called scope 3 emissions. And your travel there is something that, who is responsible for that? Is that the Venice Biennale? Is that you? Is that the airline industry?
Funnily enough, I was at the airport and someone came and said, hey, can we ask you some questions because I'm taking a survey? And they asked me, they were like, why are you coming? Are you coming to, and I said, Venice Biennale. And he was like, okay, is it just, it's just for that. I'm just coming for that. I bought the tickets already. I'm ready to go. And and I was just very enthusiastic about the fact that I was going to the Venice Biennale for the first time. But basically he was there to, check. And I thought that it was very positive that I was saying, yes, I am here for the Venice Biennale. Art has brought me to Venice. Yeah. I'm putting my tourist money into this because I want to go see art. So let's fund the cultural sector. But now I'm looking at it oh shit, did I just get the Venice Biennale into trouble? Not really. But what I mean? You can look at it. There's two sides of that coin because even though I'm traveling to see art because that's so important to me and that really proves that the level of cultural tourism that at least is worth it for me. And I know that a lot of the arts and cultural industry, there's also that other side of it that's really unsustainable.
Exactly. And this is the problem you have if you're trying to look at measuring visitor impact with museums, because you don't want to say I'm sorry, you can't come in unless you came by public transport. Yeah. Or you can't come in if you flew here.
Yeah.
But of course, that's one of the largest footprints is where the visitors are coming from.
Yeah.
And you want to make art open and accessible, but so how do you deal with those emissions?
Yeah.
So this is where it gets really tricky. So circling back, trying to figure out how you measure the carbon footprint and how you convert that using the social cost of carbon into a dollar amount, and then how much you divide that by depending on what country they come from. We have a very long formula.
Oh my goodness. That sounds so complex. I thought here it was going to be easy. 1 + 1 = 2, but no.
And I have to tell you, I've actually consulted with numerous economists and carbon calculation specialists to come up with this system. And so what we ended up doing, so it's also, this is an incentive for everyone to sign up today, because one of the other things that we wanted to do, of course, was make sure that this incentivized people to lower their carbon footprint. So every year, if you do a carbon calculation and it gets lower, then your price point gets lower. carbon is having an exponential damaging effect on our planet.
Yeah.
And so every year, the social cost of carbon, which is basically an economic way to measure that, goes up. So some economists say that it's $51 and others say it's $170.
Yeah.
But that's for 2021. And of course, 5 years ago, it was $30 or something.
Yeah,
So it's
completely
like
different.
Exactly. So what we've done is basically we grandfather you in to the social cost of carbon for the year that you sign up. So if you signed up in 2022, then we will use the social cost of carbon for 2022. If you sign up this year, we'll use this year's. If you sign up next
What
year,
a
use
good
next
incentive.
year's. So sign up today.
Yeah.
More prices.
I like that. I like that. I'm going to take inspiration. Maybe I should try and adopt that for the All About Arts podcast somehow.
Basically, what ended up happening is that because we are generating our own revenue, which for me is incredibly important because, as I mentioned, I want to provide sustainable work for my staff, and I want to be providing fair wages for the people that I'm hiring, the coaches and the trainers. It's no longer considered a charity. And we don't qualify as a nonprofit. So I'm actually, as of this week, have split the company into a for-profit and a nonprofit branch.
Okay.
So this is exciting for a couple of different reasons. I do have to say my accountant and I, he's my accountant and tax advisor, we spent 2 days coming up with this whole very complicated relationship between the nonprofit and the for-profit. But I'm super excited about it because the for-profit will now fund the nonprofit.
Nice.
Meaning that at Key Culture, we can continue to do the wonderful things that we want to be doing without having to worry about influence of sponsors or grants or things like that.
Yeah.
And once again, we've been looking for funding, but that's exhausting. So now we have a sustainable business model that allows us to pay for also hiring more people. And my whole thing is that I get so many applicants. I mean, we had a position open a couple months ago. I got 600 applications in the course of 24 hours. And I was overwhelmed.
How do you even go through that? I mean, now I understand why some companies use AI to filter through.
To be honest with you, I didn't.
Yeah.
The people I interviewed were the people who emailed me directly. I'm saying this now and I'm I know everyone's going to do this. But please do. If you want this job, if you want to come work for me, send me an email, send me a LinkedIn message. Those are the people that I interviewed. Basically, I hired one of them and then the others are in my bullpen. And I'm okay, as soon as I get some investment in the for-profit, I have these 5 people that I want to hire.
I had that too. I had that when I was, sort of. So I was looking for someone to help me out with the podcast. And the person is sitting right here, Leanne. Hey.
She's amazing, by the way.
Yeah, I know. And she was someone who I interviewed and I knew right then I was okay, this is she came 5 minutes early and she came with a notepad and I was just I was this is my girl. But then there were a couple of people who were also really impressive, who I really enjoyed interviewing. And I just thought if any other opportunities would come up, then I would keep them in mind. And I ended up also recommending someone for another position.
Oh, nice.
And it was a volunteering position and they got it. And that's great. It's called Saloon. It's for women in the arts, a networking group, and they're helping out there. And so, it's just kind of spreading the word a little bit, giving people the opportunity to network, to gain some experience, to get some education. And so I get what you mean with that. You do have people in the back of your mind then, because they do make really positive impressions. So
100%.
Side note, but if you're interviewing
Yeah.
and you're going for that, just don't be discouraged if you don't get it. Sometimes you make an amazing impression and then it really pays off down the line. Yeah. That's actually a really amazing note to end this episode on, because I have one last question, but it's a bit of a fun one. It's a bit off topic, but I always love to ask all of my guests on the podcast this question. If you could pick one artist from art history to have dinner with, who would it be and why?
Oh, goodness. That is such a good question. Can I have a full dinner table?
Yes, you can. You can. We can use your full creativity with this answer, please.
Okay, so Claude Monet has always been my favorite artist.
Really?
Yes. Growing up, I borderline obsessive with Monet. I'm talking my entire bedroom had Monet wallpaper. And my mom got me.
Wow, that's dedication.
I know. And my mom might have been a little overboard on this, but she got me a custom made Monet duvet which thank you, Mom. That was my birthday present one year.
Are these I'm picturing water lilies.
Yeah, Japanese garden.
Okay.
Yeah, Japanese garden. So the Japanese bridge. And I was, when I was 8 years old, I got to go to Giovanni and see it in person. And I've always been in love with Monet. So I think he would definitely have to be at the table. But of course, I'm a stone conservator. And so I would have to say that Michelangelo has to be there. Also, I just like Monet, like I love his work. I think that we would have like very intellectual conversations about, Impressionism and things like that. But I need to have someone there that will just like totally off the rocker, be entertaining. And I think that Michelangelo would be a spicy treat to add to the party.
All right. We got Michelangelo's, spicy treat.
I mean, he's gonna be drawing the entire time that he's there because that's what he does. But I think, or doing something, maybe sculpting. I've done like hammer and chisel sculpting on marble before, so maybe he could give me some tips on that. I would definitely have to invite some of the ancient Greek sculptors. I think Praxiteles would have to be at the table, just because I'm obsessed with everything ancient Greek. So that would be great. I'm trying to think. I mean, I've got to bring some people from different parts of the world too. This is very Eurocentric. So
yeah.
Let's throw in some like, I don't know, some of the guys who did the Moai statues from Rapa Nui.
Yeah.
I don't think we have names, but throw them on the table. I think that would be fantastic. That would be
an amazing conversation.
I can't imagine what we're going to serve.
Oh, gosh.
Just champagne, maybe?
Yeah, that might be good. That might be good. Maybe some nibbles. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe something that's so incredibly contemporary and like 21st century that would surprise everybody.
Yeah.
Something really weird.
I like that. Yeah. Okay.
I feel like that would be cool.
Yeah. But I feel like this would be a good, I mean, for me, it's like all my favorite things coming together. So it might be a little, I might hog the conversation, but I would be very interested to hear how the conversations would go between the artists as well. I think, Monet and Michelangelo having a chat, like maybe I wouldn't actually get a word in because I don't.
Probably not. Honestly, I was gonna say like I don't know.
Anyway, but and I think the ancient sculptors from Rapa Nui and from Greece talking about their methods and I'm loving this.
That would be great. Bring a microphone, sit it on the table.
I was gonna say this is what I'm gonna dream about tonight.
Yeah. Well, Caitlin, on that note, thank you so much for sitting down with me and for taking the time. This was absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure, and I'm so grateful to you for inviting me. And this has been so much fun. So thank you again for having me.
And that is it for today on All About Art. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating or a review, as it helps more people discover the show. Also, feel free to share with your friends, or if you share on social media, tag me and get in touch. Thank you so much for listening.
Recorded at the Synergy podcast studio in central London. For more information, go to synergy.tech.